Hey guys, welcome back to another Get Your Happy episode where I'm giving you all of the tools to achieve and keep and maintain your organic happiness. I'm bringing happy back. So in this particular podcast, you won't need any notes, so you don't have to, have something to write with. Today's episode is discussing, I'm actually telling my story of what Hurricane Irma taught me. And my evacuation experience. So, as we all know, the news exploded with breaking news in regards to Hurricane Irma and coming through to the Caribbean and all over Florida. So anyone who does not know, I am in St. Petersburg, Florida, and it was a very words can't explain. It was speechless, absolutely speechless when getting to the time approaching and just seeing what was on TV. So as always, I have my notes in front of me, but I really want to share how organic happiness really just remained in place. Although in the very beginning of the experience and having to evacuate, anxiety swept all of the citizens, and we really just decided to prepare for the worst. So if you want to hear more of my story and my experience of Hurricane Irma, then keep on watching. So the first thing I want to talk about is the first thing that I learned during this evacuation experience. It was really my first time going through a hurricane. I've heard, been around for Hurricane Charlie and Andrew, but it wasn't, I guess, as much as of an experience as this was, where I really had to evacuate. And so the first thing that I learned is we all came up with a plan of action, right? So in order to do this, we had to take the first step. That first step, which was to take flight, prepare our home, and really seek shelter. In an interview with Will Smith, he explains a common mistake some people make when approaching a major task. And this task was needing to prepare to evacuate. I am in Zone A, and my Florida apartment here, basically Zone A, we had to evacuate. We got mandatory letters just stating, go ahead and leave your area. And so actually on my way out the door, I actually saw the letter, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, it's about to start. And I was pretty much kind of frozen in my mind of what to do. And we had already talked about prepping to take flight. And so in order to do that, we had to, book tickets, and prices were as high as $1,000 and as low as $200. So really just kind of freezing and saying, what option is best for me. So before I go into a little bit more, I'll continue what I have in front of me. So Will Smith explains in an interview a common mistake in regards to taking action, and he talks about building a wall. And in building this wall, his father challenged him and his brother about building a wall, and with each brick at a time. And he states that what happens is, most people see it as, the end result is building this wall, whereas he sees it as that one brick at a time. So he also explains that whatever you think you can and you can't, you can do either. And Confucius has that same quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, essentially that is how you will end up. And so I knew in our mind that we can get through this. And I knew in our mind that we had to take the very first step. So, in our experience, because our flight canceled due to the airport operating hours, we had to figure out another step. And for us, that was to take shelter. We actually seek shelter that took up, that took pets, that accepted pets. And what we had to do is really just do our research, and I'll get to that some more. So actually, I can go over it now. So in our experience of taking research, of going and, taking a look and seeing how to prepare for something like this, we had to figure out what were our necessities and what we had to bring in order to, be in this space until, until we were expecting the worst. And so that's what we had to do. And I like to mention that is that you want to make sure that you are doing your research and being able to take the next step. And that's how we were able to, move on and take action. The next thing is that I noticed within Hurricane Irma and, with the evacuees and everyone, whether they're taking a flight or they're going to shelter or they're taking the option to, prep your home, which was getting sandbags, getting water, getting beans, getting batteries, flashlights, and boarding up your house. Everyone knew how to work together. So Ken Blanchard, he's an author. He writes, he has about 50 books, and he has 2 that he completed on his, with himself. He did a lot of collaboration. He also did a TED Talk, and he talks about collaboration, and he mentions if you want to grow, you must work with others. And because when you pass, then it all goes in the box. It's just you and yourself. And I thought this was very neat because when we're in the shelter, you just see everyone really just working together as they placed us in all these different rooms. And so when I mean rooms, we were in a middle school. The middle school became our shelter. And we went into these different rooms, these classrooms, and that became our space. So in order to work together, you have to understand each other's strength and weakness. So that way you'll know how to, take action appropriately. So, we had to carry each other's weight. We had to lend a hand, share knowledge, and provide mental and physical support. During the experience of being in the shelter, it was about 3,500 people, including our pets. So in the beginning, we were confused. There was feelings of being worried. We were anxious, frustrated, but we all learned how to help each other. I remember walking up the stairs, and there was a gentleman, tall, slender gentleman, and he has these air mattresses underneath both hands. I have, all these bags that we carried for food, as well as my luggage. And I remember just, with this hand, just lifting it up as he went up the stairs. He never looked back, but he knew that I was supporting him and pushing him to the very top of those stairs because we knew we wanted to get placed, and the shelter was only taking so many people, and it was first come, first serve. And so same thing, there was a person in a wheelchair, and, we had to wheel them up to the, over to the elevator so they can get up to the next floor. The staff, they were even working together to assist all the evacuees in the appropriate space. So, and throughout this, time that, we see, and, everyone's confused, frustrated, and we're really just working together to get everyone in the appropriate spot and safe. So the next thing that I learned in the evacuation period was vulnerability and trust. And I talked about this in another previous podcast, and you can always go back and review that, the 5 stages, the cycle of trust. So you can always take a look at that video after this one. So I'll touch on it a bit. And there was, again, vulnerability and trust. We had to sleep in the same room. We had to eat in front of each other. We woke up, with messy hair in the morning. You know, we had to trust each other. And that's what happened is, so once we got to the room, I was in room 213 on the second floor. It was a science classroom. So think of a classroom and think of the hard tile floor. Think of the, you know, the cold white space of a classroom, and especially a science room. So we had to all be in this room. So I'll tell you what I have here. And it says, so, you know, when you're in an elevator, it's usually one, or, you know, you and another person or three other people. And we do this, right? We don't want to look at the other person. We're not making any eye contact, or we bury our heads in the phone and we don't worry about saying anything. But here we are in this room, this classroom, and it's 25 other people. And we had to use each other and trust each other. I remember the scenario where there's one extension cord and there was all these outlets in the room, but there was only one outlet that was working, and we had to, you know, charge our phone. And, you know, we had to communicate with each other. We trusted each other not to touch the phone. You know, in places, you know, normally when you go to a restaurant or you're in a store, you wouldn't dare leave your phone. And here we had to, you know, our phones are our most prized possessions. And that's what we had to do, is we had to trust each other not to, you know, bother our phone. And we, you know, really just worked with each other. So another thing that I found very interesting was another scenario. One of the women that were in the room, she told us at the end, she was 99 and a half years old. And she was in there with her son. I believe he could have been anywhere between 70 and 80 years old. And I remember when they walked in the room, they came in the next day, and the staff asked them, she said, "Did you come with any you know, a mattress or any sort of blankets?" And they said, "No, ma'am." And they said, "All we have is our water." She said, "Well, here are some chairs that you can sit on." And I remember all of us, you know, passing over a yoga mat, passing over, you know, blankets. And, you know, I remember giving them my sweater just for them to lay on. And there was, you know, it just allowed us, again, to be vulnerable and to share and to trust. There were no walls in this room. So here we are, you know, sleeping in front of each other, eating in front of each other, communicating with each other, and just trusting each other. So that was definitely an experience right off the bat. You know, there was connection in that room. And again, I find that interesting that we were able to do that, whereas in an elevator, you know, it does not happen. So I really thought that was pretty interesting. Another thing here is joy can always be found in chaos. Right. I remember we got there at about 11 a.m. and this was on if I'm thinking correctly, a Saturday. We got there at 11 a.m. We didn't get into our room, assigned to our room, till about 5. And, you know, again, there's pets everywhere. There's people being brought in on buses. There's authority, law enforcement there, different, you know, there was a doctor on staff, nurses, running around trying to get everyone in the appropriate spot. They're trying to deliver food, trying to deliver water, and, you know, everyone's looking for their family. They're scared. It was so much, but within that, there was joy. Organic happiness is always the medicine through the storm. And this is something that I learned, that we shared our stories and big belly laughs in that room. We stored and stood in pure connection, and we shared hugs. I remember at the end when we figured out that the storm had, from the Caribbean to Florida, it went from a Category 5 hurricane down to about a 2. It was at a 3, I believe, when it was coming through Miami and further up. And so when we had realized the next day, I remember the night before, there was a woman, she had placed her Bible by the window. I had took one of my jasper stones and I placed it on the ledge. And I remember we were all nervous and we're looking at each other, and it was kind of that feeling of, oh my goodness, is this my last? Is this my last breath? And I remember we all just kind of looked at each other and we all said goodnight. And the next day, we were just shocked. There was an overcast day of rain, and we saw our cars in place, and we saw the trees are still standing strong. And, we just looked at each other and we heard the words, you can go home, grab your pet, and you can now go out and, get some fresh air and walk to your car and load your things. And we all embraced each other. It was a big sigh of relief, and it was so surreal. And it was just confusion of what just happened. So in all storms, we can all use big belly laughs. We enjoy smiles that are very contagious. Happiness is a comfortable place, and most of us want to be around that person that is happy. And that's what it was. There was no segregation in the room. It was just waiting. But in the midst of that, we knew that we all craved some sort of smile. The very last thing that we learned on the very last day as we looked outside is gratitude. After the storm passed, we had gratitude for the staff, each other, and most importantly, the sun, the ground, in our home. There were some places that had power outages, branches that were on the ground, or I saw small things that happen. And I have to be honest, there are some pretty intense things that happen. But for the very most part in our area, after this experience, was gratitude. I remember walking up to I have a Chihuahua, her name is Daisy, and I'm walking up to my dog, and I walk up to her cage, and they actually place the pets in a locker room, the girls and boys locker room. And so all you hear is these howls and these barks, and I walk up to my dog and I can feel, tears, and I just kind of let them stream. And, it was just an amazing experience between me and my dog, and she's walking and pouncing and jumping around. So no place like home. So no damage, power the next day, and I, immediately got back to my normal day-to-day, and a hot meal. I remember eating tacos the whole time, vegan tacos. We just kind of bought a whole bunch of beans, tortillas, soft shells, and rice, and like a Caribbean girl here, so I had some jerk sauce on my taco, and we just made do. And at the time, we were just like, okay, I'm craving, I kept saying the whole time, I just want a bowl of spaghetti, some veggie spaghetti. I just want spaghetti. And so, we were safe. We were all together. Light and healing goes to all of anyone that may be suffering still physically, mentally from Hurricane Irma. On the way back to my mother-in-law's space, she hands me a card, and it was one of the young ladies that were laying next to us. And on the back, it said, come over tonight for a bowl of spaghetti. I have a really great recipe. So, organic happiness at its finest in the midst of a storm, something that is, has not been so great for others. In the Caribbean islands. I grew up, my family is originally from Puerto Rico and Bahamas, and really just sending healing to the islands and family members that I don't really get a chance to speak with. And I grew up and studied in Houston, Texas as well, and I am definitely sending healing in those areas. I am glad that I was able to share this experience, and if you like this video or just want to share something, feel free to comment below. From anyone who I'm offering coaching, complimentary coaching for anyone who has
experienced Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Irma, just send me an email at getyourhappy. That's GETU, the letter U, R, the letter R, happy @gmail.com with the code Harvey or Irma. I am grateful to hear from you, and I would love to, help you move through this challenging time. I know it is. So again, thank you for watching this video and allowing me to share my experience. And I will see you back on the next Get Your Happy episode, and allow me to let you live abundantly, love your authenticity, and radiate organic happiness. Thank you.